David.
I'm sorry? I know, I'm saying that you do. We got everybody on there, right?
Hi, Ron.
Morning.
How are you?
Morning.
We're on there. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
We got a full.
Hi, Ron.
Morning. Hey there.
How are you?
Morning.
We're on there. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
We got a full.
Hi, Ron.
Morning. Hey there.
How are you?
Morning. Morning. Can't get this.
Hi, Ron.
Morning. Hey there.
How are you?
Are you good to go?
Can't get this.
Yeah, when the YouTube goes up, it starts a video. We're good.
Huh?
We're good.
We're good? Okay, great. I'd like to call this meeting to order, the Financial Advisory Board. Good morning and welcome. It's Monday, May 9th, 11:30 a.m. Please silence all cell phones and other devices. Thank you. Ms. Thompson, may I have a roll call, please?
Member Cornfeld,
Here.
Member Packler.
Here.
Member Weiner,
Here.
Member Goldberg,
Present.
Member Greenwald,
Present.
Vice Chairperson Riami,
Here.
Chairperson Stern.
Here. Nice to see a full board here. It's terrific. Great. We'll try our best to make sure we recognize everybody on Zoom there as we go through. If we can all rise for Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented? Is it, have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Public comments. Will be limited to 3 minutes each. Are there any public comments today?
There were no pre-registered public comments.
I'm sorry.
There are no pre-registered public comments.
Thank you very much. Seeing none, we'll move along. Approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes of January 27th, 2022? Do we have anything? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 27th, 2022?
Motion.
Somebody make a
approve.
motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Aye. Okay, thank you. Approved. Unfinished business, there is none. I'd like to introduce the Finance Director, for those of you who have not met, David Delina. And David, you're going to present the financial results, correct? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. On our packet today, I think we start on page, my update here on page 12 of the agenda packet. Basically, what we have here is we have the second quarter, right? So we're 6 months through our fiscal year end ending September 30th. There's just a few minor Scribner's errors on the top of each page. You'll see where it says quarter one. I changed that in the computer system and I couldn't tell you what happened. So, but anyway, so that should be quarter two.
You just took care of my first question.
Yes, that's a Scribner's error on that. You know, after I printed it and gave it to the clerk, I noticed it, so I apologize.
We'll forgive you next, okay.
I know, I appreciate it. So anyway, government wise, I like to encourage us to look at quarterly financials. The reason why it kind of flattens out the highs and the lows. Most of our revenue, comes in the first quarter of the year. And so on a streamlined basis, what my goal here is to first work on accuracy and then work on speed with my staff in the finance department. And so that's my goal as the director of finance. But anyway, so if you have any questions, but in general, things seem to be tracking fine. We have about 76% of our overall revenues through March 31st for the first 6 months. Our general expenditures are tracking. We want to see that we're hitting at approximately 50%. We have a few outliers. Those outliers there are the intergovernmental, the police department. And what those are for is those are for those prepaid items. You prepay insurance at the beginning of the year, right? And so it hits your expenses hard when you first look at it on the first 2 quarters basis. And so town manager and the finance department was a little bit over that 50% mark, but we are still under our budget. And so these are all good things. If we look, just to draw your attention, another Scribner's error that we had would be on page 15 of the document, page 4. That's going to be under water expenses. That should be a total of $1.5 million. You'll see there under water expenses, the million was inadvertently left off. But as far as water revenue goes, we would be at about 46% of where we anticipated that we should be. The reason why we're not there, the reason why we're at 41% is we're still waiting on the second half of the ARPA funds. If you recall, the town was allocated about $1.8 million, and that would show up under intergovernmental. You'll see where it says 0 right there on the top there. We got half of it in last fiscal year. In September, we had gotten half of it. So this year, we're anticipating to get about another $243,000, which would have brought up our overall revenues to about 46%. Our charges for service, which is the base fees, the consumption fees on the water side, we're tracking right now at right out 50% of our revenue. So we're good there when you compare actuals to budget. Our expenses are including debt service and capital outlay. Again, we're looking for that 50% mark to stay within budget. We're a little bit less. We're at 46%, which is something you want to see. Same thing on the sewer side. Sewer side, we had funds allocated for the ARPA funds. We got half of it last fiscal year. We're anticipating to get the other half of it this fiscal year. We haven't gotten it yet. But if we had gotten the ARPA funds, that revenue would be at 57% as compared to budget. So we're a little bit low on the charges for service. Again, this is sewer base fees and sewer usage fees. You can see there we're at about 43%. Our operating expenses, including the capital outlay, we're at 39%. So we're tracking well right now, even though we're in an environment of escalating prices. For now, we're tracking well. And so I'm here to answer any direct questions that you may have. Yes, sir.
David, quick question. It's a general question. The new software package you bought, does it allow for spreading expenses? Like you were saying, you pay for your insurance in the beginning of the year, and the number I'm sure is big, and it'll stand out the whole year. Is there a way of spreading it out over 12 months to make it more reasonable on a month-to-month basis? I know the old software, you couldn't do it.
Yeah, you can, like staff.
It's an accruals type of thing.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, staff, we could book that as a prepaid expense, right?
Right,
And then allocate 1/12 of it per year. And I will be glad to do that in the software, for ease of
Then it
purpose.
won't stand out this way and you have to explain every month why.
Yes, sir.
Other than that.
I'll take care of that.
No other questions.
I'll take care of that.
Oh, there's one other, before I forget, on the general fund, source of funds, you have the other source, non-revenue. I'm sure it was explained more than once. It shows activity through the year 0. And the amended budget has 642,000. What is that? Can refresh my memory? I'm sure it's been explained.
Well, let me
On page
see.
12,
Yeah,
source of funds under general funds, it says other sources, non-revenue.
yeah. Well, let me see, taxes, right, miscellaneous. I believe, I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to misquote. Let me find out exactly what's included in that budgeted number to tell you why we didn't get that, but I will be glad to email you that. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It is. I want to say it's the ARPA funds, but I'm not 100% sure. So I want to make sure that I get my arms around what that minor detail is.
Fine, thanks.
My pleasure.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
On page 3 of the financial report, or page 14 of the overall,
Yes.
under fund balance category,
Yes.
on unassigned, you have a figure that's very close to $6 million
Right.
and a total of $14 million.
Right.
It was my distinct impression, and I could be remembering it wrong, it's been a while. But at our last meeting, when we were talking about allocation of these funds, there was a total of about $8 million in those categories. And I remember my personal concern was that when we allocated money to fire and we said how much, and we put another $1 million into one of our other budgets, into the disaster recovery,
That's correct.
that we were going to be left with not a heck of a lot of money. And all of a sudden now, and maybe it's not all of a sudden, but what I'm seeing is an unassigned category that's still 6 million, even after all that other money's been allocated. And there's either a significant discrepancy or I'm clearly misunderstanding something. So perhaps you could explain that for me.
My pleasure. The $14 million not only includes the general fund, and it may have been my error in recording and presenting it this way. The $14 million also includes the general fund, the building fund, and the library fund and things of that nature, the minor funds. In the previous report that we had sent you, I had restricted it only to the general fund, which would not include the building fund or any other minor funds. And so I will adjust that. Again, we're waiting for our auditors to be done with the audited financial statements, in which time we will have an audited financial statement fund balance, which is a better indicator of where our fund balance is.
I have a comment on that because I have the 1231, the total amount was 10,000,003.
Right.
And I saw it jump to 14 million. I think we spoke about that at the last meeting, the reallocation of the funds that Natasha or Vice Chair mentioned. So it went from 10,000,003 to the amount that's shown here is 14.
Right.
And the categories have changed where we had the unassigned was unassigned at 6. It was in December was 7.3. I think what occurred is what we discussed the last meeting. They reallocated and renamed everything. The names are different. We have the fire rescue. Wasn't up until December there was no fire rescue line.
Right.
So it was all shuffled around based on the discussion we had at the last meeting. And Natasha indicated we're going to go with 17.6% funds unassigned, and we went through that whole exercise. I think that reflects the conversations of how we are going to use the funds going forward. And I believe the increase from 10.4 to 14 million has to do with reallocating the money received for sale of land into the reserves. Am I right?
Or am I wrong?
No,
It did go up by that amount, but this
I
was
actually
even
believe
less.
that it, on the December data that I had given you, that was just for the general fund, didn't include other funds. Like, for example, we have a building fund. We have a library fund. You have all these minor little funds inside. And so the 14.078 million in total, right, includes the, not only the general fund, but the building fund. It includes everything except water and sewer. And so, but I will make sure I
Yeah,
get
think
that
that's
clarified.
what occurred, because the prior years was always about 10 million, and now I saw 14. and
Right.
There was discussion regarding it being reallocated into the general fund. So
Right.
I think clarification, that's important to understand.
I will-
Where the $3.5 million came from.
I will make sure that I get that clarified. Number one, I'll make sure I get that clarified by our external auditors. And number two, I'll make sure that I update that for our next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, this would be great if there's an
Yes, sir.
extra, like $4 million lying around, but
Yeah.
because I don't think that you're going to find that the building fund and the library fund are going to come anywhere as near, $4 million.
You're saying Fund 106 is in there.
Yeah,
The
right.
building department has a healthy fund balance for which the commission used, that was their basis for deciding to give that permit discount through the end of the year. Because it's probably in the $1.5 million, $1.6 million. I mean, again, this is still very good news. And last time we saw unaudited numbers and we had some transitions. So David was trying to pull some stuff together. So this is good. I mean, this is really good news that, we're in a better financial position 4 months later, once we start getting more details flushed out during that audit process.
No, I mean, this is great news. I mean,
Well,
I'm delighted to see that even with, moving 4 million over to fire, that there's still pretty close to 6 million unassigned. I think that's all terrific news. My concern is, I mean, we don't make decisions, but we make recommendations.
Yes,
And when
sir.
we're debating how much money should be allocated to something, it makes a big difference whether we're talking about a bucket of $6 million or a bucket of $10 million to decide how much we're allocating to what. So like the last time, a couple of us wanted to give less money to fire, for example, and voted that way because we thought that the amount of reserves was $4 million less than what's being shown here. So again, and this may all come out in the wash, but that's my only concern is
Yes,
if
sir.
we're going to be making recommendations, it really needs to be done with the most accurate information possible or we're going to get off track. That's all.
Absolutely. And that's my commitment here today is day 6, as a full-time employee of the town, and I'm happy to be here. But at the end of the day, that is my commitment. And that's what I told my boss, the town manager, that number one, we'll work on accuracy, number one, and then number two, we're going to work on speed. And so that's,
I believe the number was always 10 million. I remember that when I saw 14 and
Yeah.
saying, where did the other $3.5 million
Yeah.
come from?
well, if you look in our CAFR, you'll see that 10 million is under what's called the general fund. And then you have right next to that is the building department, and then you also have minor funds. And then all the way over to the right-hand side, it says total governmental. And that last year was about a little bit over $12 million in total. And I think that I had just grabbed the total there. But the way we allocate, if you'll see here where it says budget stabilization disaster. So what I take is I take our total general fund expenditures, right? And I multiply it by the 16.7%, right? And so, and that's all I did there. And we have a specific amount allocated for the fire rescue. That's the $4 million. And the plug figure, if you would be the unassigned. So.
Anybody else have any questions on that?
Question, year over year on the general fund on the taxes. Do you know what the increase was percentage wise?
On the ad valorem last year, I think we were about 3.46. And I'm hoping we should be in a better position. We get those numbers, Tricia, in a couple of weeks, I think. We get that from the property appraiser. Will give us their initial estimates, which we kind of use for the budget. I'm hoping the number is healthier than 3.4 as we all seeing our buildings and you see the oceanfront properties transacting at these wild numbers. I'm hoping we'll be in a healthier spot, and that'll be part of our conversation because you have a budget, you have a schedule here. We come back to you in July to present our preliminary numbers and budgets, and it'll start picking up speed.
I have a couple of quick questions.
Yes, sir.
Maybe you can comment on.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
looking at on page 12, the fines and forfeitures, 2.8 versus 10.7. Could you comment on that?
Page 12.
Yeah, under source of funds, fines and forfeitures.
Yeah, fines and forfeitures. Those are tickets and overdue books.
No, I understand that.
oh.
But why is there such a discrepancy between what we're planning and what we actually have in?
It's not something that is a reoccurring source of revenue, right? So it's not like a water or base fee charge. We can't necessarily predict when that $10,000 will fall into which quarter, depending on seasonality.
I guess my real question is, are you comfortable with the 10.7 number for the year?
Well, right now, if we were to round up, right now we're at 30% of the year. We're 20% shy. Yeah, I mean, I think for now, I think that a $10,700 fines and forfeitures amount for our budget, it seems reasonable. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the other question is under the post office.
Yes.
On the next page there, we're 53 against 124 plan. Is that going to continue? Will you comment on that?
Are you on the, you're on the expenditure side?
Yeah, I'm on page 13, upper right.
Yep.
Post.
So these right here are the expenditure side, right? So
Right.
the first part there is the revenue side. Here, the expenditure side. We break our expenditures down into personnel service and operating expenses. The post office, yeah, I think that's a reason. I think it's a good number. If you recall, we have one full-time employee there and we have two less than part-time employees there. I believe it's between that and the library. We have we don't have a lot of staff in there, but yeah, I think that's something that also probably will see a ramp up possibly in hours. We may have seen a ramp up with Mother's Day, with additional postage, people coming in, mailing out gifts or what have you. But I think that's a reasonable number.
One other question.
Yes, sir.
From what you know now and the sales tax revenue, do you think that's a good number, a low number, high number we can expect? Do you have any feel for it now that we're into the season?
I do not have any feel for it now. All I know is that sales tax for the discretionary sales tax. Yeah, I know that Florida is extremely healthy. Thank God. And I know that our gasoline tax is outpacing any prior years. I know that our sales tax we're doing very healthy on that. But I will double check that, sir, and I'll get you that information.
Great. Thank you very much. Nice to have you on board.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your comments. Thank you. I'd like to move along now and refer the fire station financing to Marshall Laverty, Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. Again, I'll just give you a little bit of background. As everybody knows, we're moving forward with creating our first fire department here, the town of Highland Beach. One of the big pieces of that is going to be the construction of a new fire station and or a very significant reconstruction of the existing fire station. I think we're moving more towards a new fire station. From the building, this just isn't holding up, and it's too low, it's old, it can't handle any more weight on top. So we're going to be looking at a very significant, or I'm guessing a new construct. With that being said, the commission, with your assistance, put aside $4 million It'll probably go up just a touch. We have $10 million authorization from the community to get this off the ground. So basically the idea is 50% will come in through the loan, 50% cash. That's how we'll get to the finish line on the 10 million. I would have told you a year ago when we put all the estimates together, none of us saw the inflation or the upward pressure or some of the supply chain issues. And that's posing some concerns to us that what we thought was going to be the construction, even with healthy contingencies, we're up against that already. And we're now, if you watched, we have Kaufman Lynn, who's going to be helping us as a construction manager at risk, getting to that either a stipulated sum or guaranteed maximum price. But they got to work with our architects to figure out what's available, what are the lead times. A lot of specialty products going to the fire station. I'm comfortable with the 10 million, but our initial estimates on what the station was going to cost is growing, and it's growing at a rapid pace that none of us could foresee. Even putting in the healthy contingencies, Kaufman Lynn said they're up 28% over the year on construction costs, lead times doubling. So we really are going to be really working on getting the most effective thing. So when we did that, we then, again, as a tax exempt regulated municipality, we wanted to go out and borrow. We didn't want to sell bonds. That would require another action from the community. But we already are authorized. So we're moving forward with a covenant to budget and appropriate, which is the ability to leverage our non-ad valorem tax-based revenues to cover the cost of the debt obligation. So we were able to do that. And we then brought in John Ford, who's here today, who's our municipal financial advisor. Also not present, but in the background is Skip Miller, who's our bond counsel. Even though we're not selling bonds, you still need a finance attorney. And we decided to go out. We're doing a best of interest solicitation RFP process where we went out to a series of banks. John went out to, I think, like 70 institutions for a direct solicitation, put it on our website. And as you could see, we had a really good positive response from the banking community with interest rates, I think, that are very favorable. And there's a unique product that John will go through. At our last meeting on May 3rd, we did the first read of an ordinance. As we are required, we have to pass an ordinance to borrow money. So we did the first step, which is the first read of the ordinance. Second read of the ordinance is next Tuesday. And then we'll come back on the 24th to do an award and resolution to award. So in a final loan agreement. So those things come on the 24th. After today's meeting, and we take your recommendation to the commission, that will be discussed on Tuesday, the 17th, also for like a tentative award, if you will. So my concern with adding an extra step in this process, which is the 24th special meeting of the commission, is there's so many options here. We didn't know, you all might have a different direction from this discussion, and then the commission might get it and say, maybe a little bit different. So we don't know. I think everybody's going to be in lockstep here, but we wanted to add that extra step just in case there was ever a conflict or a difference of opinion potentially. So again, we did really well. We opened those on the 28th of April. John and his team have been going through it, and he's put up this recommendation. And if you don't mind, I'll just yield my time to him, and he can walk you through what he found from the banks. You have a copy of our RFP that we put out. You have the addendum. You also have each of the proposals submitted by the 11 institutions. And some of those institutions offered us, several options. So I'll turn it over to John.
Hey, John, before you get started, I have one very fast question, which goes across the board here. You're reading through the proposals. Some of them expire or have expired already.
Yes.
When we look at these things, are they extended? Because some of the interest rates, they said in the proposals, they would be adjusted. So that's just a general question. You may want to cover that in your presentation.
Certainly I will. In response to your question, maybe. If a bank put in that their proposal expires on a date certain, not that the rate expires, but the proposal in general expired, then if the committee were to select one of them, which I think is unlikely, we could go back and say, will you still honor your proposal? And if so, what is the interest rate, which we understand has expired? It would be treated as an indicative rate from a pricing standpoint. So they may still say, oh, yeah, we'd love to still be under consideration, but the market's moved and the rate today is X. So they might move that aspect of it, but I do not anticipate that any of them would change any of the terms or conditions laid out in the documents. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So my name is John Ford. I represent Ford and Associates, Inc. We're the town's municipal advisor out of Tampa. We assisted the town in preparing the RFP the town manager alluded to. That was published on April 8th. Responses to that were received on April 28th. This is for a tax exempt bank loan, the estimated size of which was about $5,050,000, which represents a $5 million project fund and anticipated cost of issuance of about $50,000. That varies slightly proposal to proposal, depending upon what the banks came back with. The town got 11 total proposals from banks. For the record, I consider that a very, very good response. I anticipated somewhere in the 5 to 8 range, so I was personally very, very pleased. BCI Capital, First Internet Public Finance, Huntington Public Capital, JP Morgan, Key Government Finance, Pinnacle Public Finance, which is a division of Bank United, for the record, PNC Bank, Signature Public Funding Corp., Synovus Bank, Truist Bank, and Webster Bank, all proposed. These are all names that have people that specialized in governmental lending. All of this would be tax exempt in nature, so it's got a few wrinkles that typical loans like you and I might take out for our businesses or our personal lives are a little different here. As the town manager alluded to, some of these proposals contained multiple structures for the town to consider. JP Morgan proposed 3 different structures, essentially based on whether and how quickly you could prepay the loan, and the pricing was tied to that. PNC Bank offered 3 different structures for your consideration, all of which contain indicative interest rates, as were JP Morgan's, by the way. PNC offered just a straight 9.5-year normal amortization option. Their second option, option B, was 2 years interest only. And the third option was a drawdown structure, which would essentially be a variable rate. It would function almost like a line of credit, if you will, for 2 years. And then they provided a formula at which it would convert to a fixed rate according to the prevailing US Treasury yield at the time. So that's an interesting structure for our consideration. After all was said and done, we are recommending that the town consider either the Webster Bank proposal, which is a traditional fixed rate proposal in nature. They proposed a 2.90% interest rate. That is firm. They will agree to hold that until, I believe, June 10th. Very good rate, very good pricing. Or Synovus Bank was the third bank that proposed 2 different structures. Their first one, option A, was the one that we were most interested in. And it offers a 1-year drawdown period along with a 9.5-year fixed interest rate, which is interesting and unusual. Happens to be precisely the structure that a couple of the commissioners wanted to see. So we were very happy to see that. It does make the selection process a little more difficult because this is no longer an apples to apples comparison. We can't look at Webster Bank at 2.9%, where they give you $5 million on day one, and then look at Synovus Bank, where you may take $5 million on day one, unlikely, or you may take it in draws over the next 12 months, or you may take it all in 12 months time and say, what's the overall cost? The second one is a bit of an unknown. So that is what we've done here. For the structures where the costs are firm and known, as is in the recommendation document, I believe you've all seen, we've calculated out the cost of capital that results from those proposals. That takes into account the interest rate that was proposed, whether it was firm or indicative, as well as any cost of issuance. And that would include not only the town's costs for myself and Mr. Miller, but also for the bank's counsel. It's very, very typical for a bank to have an outside legal firm review these documents. Not all banks do, a couple handle that internally, but in this case, most of the banks did give us an outside legal counsel fee. We also have a table in here comparing the prepayment options for each of the loans, and we decided to put that in so much detail because that was a facet that we felt was of great importance to the commission prior to putting out this RFP. And a couple of the banks allowed for immediate prepayment without penalty, but they may have limited that prepayment option to prepayment in whole. So yeah, you can prepay it back anytime you want, but you got to do the whole $5 million or whatever's out there at that time. That is perhaps less helpful than a prepayment option that is not quite as generous, saying you can do it day one, but we will let you do it in part over time. So that may be more useful to the town, but that's a bit of a subjective judgment. After looking at all of these, assessing other terms and conditions, we did not see any terms and conditions in these proposals that we felt were incredibly problematic, as is sometimes the case. We'll sometimes get a bank that proposes a term or condition that's just unacceptable, and we say you've either got to waive that or there's no way that the municipality is going to move forward with it. That was not the case here. And before I move into the recommendation, the third proposal that I want to highlight is from PNC Bank. And I note that PNC is the town's bank of account. They do your general banking services. Their first option, option one, came in at a screaming interest rate. I think it was about 2.53 or 2.55 as proposed. It is indicative, so it moves with the market, but it gets the all-in cost lower than any other proposal. It has moved over time. As of last Friday, about 11 a.m., we asked them for a refresh. That rate was up to about a 267. So we've moved a good bit in that time. I'm sure you're all aware that treasury markets are a bit volatile right now. It is an interesting proposal to consider. And the prepayment option associated with it is also interesting. They use what is called a make whole redemption feature. And what that says is that you can prepay the loan at any time, but the penalty associated with that, if any, is going to be based on the level of interest rates in the market. And typically, as rates go down, your prepayment penalty is going to go up. If we were talking about long-term bonds, this would eliminate the opportunity you would have for saving money through a refinancing. You would not be able to refi at a lower rate. The penalty would offset that. Here, it may not do that at all. If rates continue to rise, there's a good chance that there's no prepayment penalties at all. If rates stay where they are or go lower, and I remind you that as this loan gets shorter, the interest rate applicable will naturally fall. We could see prepayment penalties associated with that. So I will pause there. I know that's a lot to take in. I'll pause there and take questions.
What was the length of the PNC loan?
I'm sorry?
What was the length of the PNC loan?
All of them were proposed with a final maturity of March 30th, 2032, about 9.5 years.
And did you look at doing this because it's such a small dollar amount as a private placement?
We were engaged solely to do this as a private placement, but based on the dollar amount and based on the fact that when we were engaged, you did not have a finance director in place, I probably at that time would have thought that was the best case to go. That was the best way.
That's what I think.
Ron?
Yeah. I had a couple questions. The Webster Bank in the, you said 2.9, so I guess maybe it's the all-in on the write-up, it shows 3.085.
Yes, sir. That's the all-in.
Okay. I understand the reluctance of the town to look at floating rates, but considering how long it might take to do this, in terms of the actual build, do any of them, would they consider like an interest-only construction with a firm at time of commitment, balance, the remainder of the loan, like on a 10-year AM?
So are you asking if they would do a variable rate during the construction period or just interest only during the construction period?
Interest only.
So that is the structure that Synovus Bank proposed under, I forget if they labeled it option A or option 1, but you would have the ability under that permanent fixed rate, and I believe that was a 3.28%, the town could draw down money for the first 12 months as desired.
Okay, but it's only 12 months. I mean, to me, a 12-month drawdown isn't that big a deal, since we don't know. I mean, 12 months goes by so quickly. It seems like the Webster, also in the Webster letter of intent, I didn't see you have it in the prepay, the 300 grand that you
Yes,
can
sir.
prepay, but I didn't see that in there.
It
And
was
there-
not, it was, we had to go back to several banks for clarification on certain points. And that was one of the things that a couple of different banks had not provided, was the distinction between partial and in whole prepayment. Truist Bank was also approached for clarification on that point and came back saying no partial prepayment. So yeah, that was a separate dialogue that's not included here.
Okay, so that would, that to me, if the town, accumulates some funds along the way after what I you got to, it's you got it for up, 5 years, up to 5 years, you'd be paying a penalty. But after that, you could pop in 300 grand at a time. That seems to be, to me, a favorable aspect. Other than, as pointed out, a straight private placement would be nice.
Any other questions at this point?
Yes, I just want to go back to where Marshall started. So you had said that, if I understood you correctly, what you're seeing in the cost right now, about 28% increase in building materials. And I think based on what I'm seeing in business for raw materials, supply chain issues, et cetera, that's pretty normal right now, multiple price increases, one after another. In the unfortunate times we're in right now. So is there a plan right now to increase the reserve associated with the entire build out of the firehouse? Because, based on 28%, I don't think the current reserves, directionally speaking, would be sufficient.
I think when the audit comes on, I think if I get your question correct, we only had 4 million cash. We'll probably add $1 million based on the audit. I could see the vice mayor I could hear her in my voice. It's kind of funny, but I could hear her being like, we need to, Dr. Greenwald already alluded to it too. Like, we need to pull some more money over, most likely. But again, we can't raise the 10 million without going to the voters. And I hope, and again, the 10 million is the cost to get it started. So it's the fire station, it's the apparatus, it's the equipment, it's the bed rolls. It sounds weird to say that. Ready racks, boots, dryers, exhaust, like all those things, everything has to be at 10. And I think we're still pretty good at that, but boy, we're really moving that needle quickly. And I did allude to the commission, and I wasn't trying to, panic anybody, but I said there could be a point that if it doesn't slow, that we have to put something on hold for a minute and think about these things, because, again, if it's, month over month, we're seeing, 8, 10, 12%, and then every year it's 30% over. That could be something that we may have difficulty with when we have a fixed charter limit, which we all know about. But I mean, if that number just keeps on hitting us, the good thing about a CMR at risk is, or what I'm probably going to push a stipulated sum where it's pure guarantee maximum price. If you can't do it, that's on you. But if you could, do it and save a couple bucks, that stays with the contractor. So it gives them a lot of motivation to get it done. I think when we get to that point, and we should have that price with them probably August, September, we'll know kind of what we'd expect that budget to be or where we're headed, to know if there's a ripcord moment, if you will, and if we got to parachute out of the project. So I think we'll start to see more of it. We're still working. We're really early in design. I know we've been working on it for a while. We had schematics like, what about this? What about this? How about that? Now the commission approved the the contractor. So Kaufman Lynn's on a pre-construction services contract with us, and they're going to sit with the architect once a week and start getting crafting deliverables, schedule, budget. Can we even, some of these conversations I never thought in my career I'd ever hear, like,
Sure.
yeah, we might not get steel. So we may have to look at, PSI joists. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't get steel?
That's
Or the
times we're
lead
in,
time
right?
is so long that
Yep.
you can't, or the bifold doors that I'm a big advocate for. It's a nice look for the community. Those could be 24 months out. Well, I need to order those like next week then, right? Because I'm hoping for a 2-year, like everything up and going. So I think it's going to be a very dynamic process. I could see us calling you all for special meetings pretty regularly to like, how do we want to handle this? But at the moment, we're good. I think if it just calms down a little bit, that I almost said flatten the curve. We're done hearing that, I guess, right? So if that inflationary rise could slow and level off a bit, that would be great. And some stuff, it isn't a supply chain issue as the product itself is. They're telling us like they don't have truckers to drive it here or something. So those create those bottlenecks or delays, So I'm hoping we in the next couple of months will have a better number to start sharing with the community, because we're all in this. So community, with that kind of support number, we are truly all in this lockstep and arm to arm to figure out how we're going to push this through and get it done. But I think we're still in a good spot. And I'm glad to see we were able to get some really good financing options. I know that people wanted more flexibility in delivery of some products, but working with our bond counsel, as a statutory municipality tax exempt, our flexibility is somewhat limiting. I know it's kind of frustrating for some. I always have to remember I've been doing this like for a long time in the public side of it. And it's just the way we do it. And then you're like, why do we need a municipal financial advisor or a bond counsel? We're not selling bonds. I'm just going to go to the bank and we have to go through this RFP process. And then we could have county regulatory agencies watching over to how we take each step through. Those are the frustrating, parts of it for everybody that, to see how the sausage is made. Sometimes it's kind of frustrating. So.
All right, good. So thank you. My general feeling is things aren't going to get better anytime soon from what I'm seeing in the business environment from both a supply chain and inflationary perspective. I'd like you to be mindful of that as we continue to move forward. I think that sooner we can acknowledge that we may need more assistance, that the better, right? And just one final point on this. Is the town open to selling or receiving a donation for the naming rights of the new firehouse?
Is that an offer? We can draft up a contract.
I think we should solicit one.
Mr. Manager, that is something you're going to want to talk to Mr. Miller about.
Sure. So, yes, if you read the Coastal Star, I had some general stuff. We're just trying to let that out a little bit to see, if there is some type of benefactor of size that's interested. I'm not sure we'll have something substantial, but we were hoping to do something creatively. I call it like a giving wall. So the community facing wall of the fire station could be something artistic where people could have some naming rights to bricks or components on a wall that kind of, in the shape of a palm. I have no idea.
Sure.
It could be a palm tree brick pattern, and each of those bricks and that could be, the Goldberg family, boom, gets a brick. Sure. And and you can have that. So it's very creative. It's a good commitment to bring us all on to this making of place that we have this opportunity. Not very often, right? These are like once in a generation type construction projects. So I'm hoping we could find that. But again, if naming rights, I don't know that we'll go out and solicit it, but if somebody in the community comes forward and says, we'll take the sting out of the project, I think the commission, and it seems like most of the residents that I run into are comfortable with that idea. So
Sure. Okay.
We're just slowly leaking out. So if you hear or see anybody or you're interested, just get in touch with me and we'll try to see if we can't make that happen. We had a new I tell a story jokingly, a new gentleman just moved into town. He's like, what can I do to help this or that? And I said, I need a fire station. He started laughing, but he was very kind that he, wants to help, but he didn't jump at, just writing a blank check for the fire station. But, those are the types of things that we're going to have to do as a community, is try to, And even if it's a little stuff, at least we make the place more ours. So the residents have their fingerprints all over this building would be great. It really would be.
Great, thank you.
But let me just a point of clarification. One of the primary ones that we're looking at is Webster, and right here it says that a borrower extend in writing, the terms will expire May 6th. Is that one of them that was able to be?
We're
To a
going to have
later
to
date?
we're going to have to contact them to make sure that they will still hold that rate.
Because that, if we're looking and there was a recommendation, the two leading competitors on this thing, it would be very, very important to know those things, whether or not they're going to extend the offer or they're going to raise it and one isn't. That's going to go into the thinking. So it's important we get that information.
Okay.
The other question I have is, are the closing costs for each bank comparable? Or are there any differences? Because I noticed in the attorney's fees, for example, they ranged anywhere from $4,500 to $8,500 in the individual proposals.
Yes, sir. And there were a couple of banks, Webster Bank proposed no legal counsel fees, Key Government Finance, no legal counsel fees,
That's
and BCI Capital, no legal counsel fees. So 0 to 8,500.
But as far as the regular closing costs are concerned, are they comparable for
Oh,
each
yes.
of these? Yeah, so there's, okay.
That I think we had estimated $7,500 in our numbers when we had run some preliminaries. I have seen these go up as high as $15,000 or occasionally if you get a firm.
I'm talking to the total closing fee, stamp, stock, whatever's necessary to close the loan.
Yeah, it's very comparable.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Questions? Comments?
That's too easy. I'll start then. The sense I get, as we know, the economy is, I don't want to talk about Wall Street at all, but it's interest rates are going in the same direction as investments are. It's not good. And I think that leads me to believe that fixed is the only way to go. Variable for the next couple of years is going to be very, very difficult. So just trying to get back to basics and where we are on this. Secondly, the terms are all the same. I'm not too concerned. I think they follow Marshall very, very closely by answering it. They did a very good job of not going out of that. And until we read, and the draft is our responsibility, the way I'm reading it, the final draft of the agreements, we control that, but that's where the quote fun begins, from my experience.
So I would clarify that with bank loans, typically from this point on, the finalization of the documents is a collaborative process. The bank does have its own legal counsel. So Mr. Miller and whoever the bank's counsel are may find something to argue about that may loop the rest of us in on business matters. The goal is to try to hammer out all of that stuff as early as possible.
Yeah,
But
that's my point. Try to get that done. So that doesn't become, the clock is ticking. We even getting a loan with drawdowns in the next 12 months. Marshall's saying are we close to drawing down once we sign, or is it going to be 90 days until we need some funds? Remember, this is for building the building. And I never saw this word before, I must admit, tenants, which means associated with the building. So we really won't be, I could be wrong, somebody please correct me. We won't be drawing down any significant funds for 3 to 6 months. If they give a year and it costs us something for that year, because I believe that it's variable during that period of time. So I think it's prudent for us to say, keep it simple in the sense on fixed versus variable. I voted for myself that it was fixed only. I read every one of them and it came back to the fixed one. I think that's important to know. We are not near signing an agreement with dollar signs on it, what it's going to cost, and some schedule of drawdowns needed over the next 12 months. So it's not important unless it really is, can we negotiate 2-year drawdowns? I don't know. I don't know how far we want to go. It seems we want to get this done now. which means by the end of May, am I correct, Marshall? Get this signed up by the end of May?
Yeah, and again, that's, you hit on a good point there. If we're not ready for construction, why didn't we wait longer to go through this process? And the beginning part of what you were saying is what drove us to move quicker is the interest rate environment is increasing. And we wanted to capture as low as possible, as early as possible. Because if you wait, our guess is from our conversations or what we're hearing, again, I'll steal John's word. He doesn't have a crystal ball. He carries around on guessing that, but everybody's seeing that it's an upward trajectory. So when we started this conversation, we thought we'd be at a 2%. As we started going, you saw the Feds drop 50 basis point on interest rate. That affected us, and it kind of moved that from what we thought was 2.25 to 3.25. So in that 1 month of preparing the consultants and the like to get ready to go out, we saw the interest rates creep. So it is tricky to how to, and a couple of banks asked us, what's our draw schedule? We don't have one yet because we don't have a final design and this and that. But at the time we were knowing that, 50% of the 10 million authorization, we borrow it. And that's why I think the commission really hit hard on that prepayment stuff. Like if we can go ahead and just prepay it, because it looks like our financial position is strong, we don't have some of those variables. We borrow the money and we pay it off in 5 years. We're out from underneath it. So that was kind of our flex position is get the best interest rate now in hand. And if the prepayment isn't too bad, we can unravel or get rid of this loan more quickly than possible.
Let me just find the prepayments for Webster I thought was interesting. If I'm reading it right, the years 1, 2, 3, no call means there's no can do it. 4, 5 is at 1% more, it's 101%. So simple math says it's going to cost us a few extra. And then thereafter, it's at 100% in prime. It's not bad. If we're going to come back to prepayment, we're a strong town. And if we see as it goes, it's going very smoothly and we're generating, as we did over a 10-year period, our reserve funds went up without, in the beginning, it was because of tax increases and we didn't use the money, but we could find a way, if we want, to start putting money away. So when year 5 comes on this, year 6, we could have a nice bundle to pay it down a portion of the note. It doesn't say anything about you have to pay it all. It seems to be open-ended. That sounds like a very good factor, and that's the only one that I believe I would go for, because on this point only, that gives us the ability in the later years when things are moving along smoothly to really stop it and pay it. Let's put it that way.
What I would also say on the draw stuff, I failed to mention that might help is because of this tax exempt status, we have to take 5% in 6 months. So we have to draw something down. We're required if you go with the drawdown schedule. But talking with the contractor, as soon as we're pretty close to a design, we got to start ordering stuff. So we're going to start drawing stuff for like doors, windows, certain concrete rebar. We're going to buy stuff early just because it takes long to get here. So we're going to start, buying things with high lead times, like the commission's probably going to authorize in early June an EMS unit. That's like 18 to 20 months, 24 months to get an ambulance. It's crazy. So, we're going to start, spending some money pretty quickly. I just wish I had a good clean set of drawings to say, this is what we're building to rally around, but we're kind of having to make some educated guess, safe ones, I think. But it's hard to how much and when we're going to draw, but we'll be within the next 12 months, we will be spending money.
So there's value in it then if we get drawdowns in the beginning and payment at the end, like Webster. I'm sorry, I read all these, not assigned to come together as one bundle. I don't know if Webster gives us the ability to, in the first couple of years, for drawdowns, I don't recall at this point.
Yeah, I can't imagine us unraveling anything too early, but
So the scenario.
Does Webster allow us drawdowns in the beginning?
No.
I apologize. No, but at the end,
No.
then payoffs.
The scenario under which the Synovus Bank drawdown structure would be just a screaming deal is you utilize the drawdowns. You draw 50 grand at closing to pay your closing costs. That gets you the deliverance for tax purposes. You draw the other funds down as you need them. Maybe you need a couple $1 million this November, this December. The other 3 million next spring, you're done, you're finally locked out. Then at year 3, the Synovus Bank prepayment would allow you to pay off with no penalty. So you've essentially shortened that loan to about 2.5 years. That would be very difficult to beat if the town thought that they were going to prepay that loan that quickly. You don't pay it off that quickly. You wait till year 5, and there's sort of a crossover point there between that drawdown structure that's offered by the Synovus Bank versus the standard structure that's offered by Webster at the lower interest rate. And those costs somewhere in there crossover. Again, there's not just a wonderfully numeric way to say this is the better proposal. It depends upon a lot of things in the future that we just don't know for certain.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Well, we've been charged with making a recommendation, and that's what it comes down to. And I'll propose a recommendation, which, go ahead.
If I could just ask one question, what do you recommend? And then what's the downside of whatever it is that you recommend?
Okay, so personally, and without a lot of data to differentiate where the value is in these two proposals, if it were my money, I would go with Webster Bank. I fully acknowledge that the Synovus Bank drawdown structure might offer better value over time. That's uncertain. I like having the 2.9%. They're very, very close to a toss up for me. I'd probably go with Webster, but they're very, very close.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I was going to, before this comment, it's interesting because I was going to make a motion that we go with Webster if in fact the terms are as we read them at this point and they don't rise, because that would take the secondary. You recommended 2 banks, correct? As the leaders in your write-up.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I would list those 2 banks, but I would recommend going this way first, and if nothing changes, and then have the fallback of the other one if not.
That makes sense.
If someone wants to put that into a formal motion, I'd appreciate it. Okay. I'll make a motion that we go with Webster Bank if the terms do not change from the original proposal.
Second,
I'll second it.
Okay, is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, then do we need a roll call vote? Roll call vote, please.
Just for clarification, Chairperson Stern, you made the motion, and was it Greenwald?
Yeah, I'll volunteer for that.
Okay, Chairperson Stern,
I'm sorry, yes.
Member Greenwald,
Yes,
Member Riami,
yes.
Member Goldberg,
Yes.
Member Weiner,
Yes.
Member Packler,
Yes.
and Member Cornfeld.
yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
And I've already
Appreciate
reached
your
out
input.
to Webster Bank to confirm that they're good.
Yeah, that would be the next step.
Since we
yeah.
hear all of the town manager
And
numbers.
again, this is a recommendation of the commission. The commission, of course, will make the final decision.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, announcements. May 10th, Code Enforcement Board, the regular meeting has been canceled. May 12th, Planning Board regular meeting. May 17th, 1:30 Town Commission. May 24th, 1:30 Town Commission, special meeting. May 30th, Town Hall close in observance of Memorial Day. There is another piece of business on the agenda, and that's to talk about our future meetings. And I'd like to poll the board here to see availability. And we're looking, the proposal was for July 7th at 11:30 a.m. And the second one for August 18th, also at 11:30 a.m. Can we just poll to see if everybody would be available for those two, unless another special meeting is asked of us?
I will be traveling that day.
Which one? Let's take them one at a time. then.
July 7th.
Let's take the August 18th first. You want to poll on, would you poll it, Brenda, please?
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Member
July
Cornfeld?
7th, July
July
7th first,
7th.
July 7th first, yes, please.
Okay. Member Cornfeld,
That's okay, yes.
member Packler,
July 7th, I'll be there in person.
member Weiner,
I'll be on an airplane.
member Goldberg,
Yes, I can be here.
member Greenwald,
I'll be here.
Vice Chair Rami,
Yes, or one way or another.
Chairperson Stern.
As long as my golf is done by, yeah, yes, I do. Okay, let's go to the second one, August the 18th.
Member Cornfeld,
Yes, I'm okay.
member Packler,
Yes, the August date will be Zoom, if that's okay.
member Weiner,
Yes.
member Goldberg,
Yes.
member Greenwald,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rami,
Yes.
and Chairperson Stern.
Yes, we'll put those on the calendar. We'll confirm those. And again, if there's any other commission that we need to get together for, we'll be happy to do that if we,
Can we have a motion to approve those two meeting dates?
I'm sorry?
Can we have a motion to approve the two meeting dates?
Okay,
Of the two dates, July 7th,
July
and
7th.
August 18th.
We have a second?
Second.
We need a roll call or just
All in favor.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. There being no further business to come before the board, the meeting is adjourned at 12:35. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right.